Welcome back to Court TV Live. Convicted killer Scott Peterson could find out if he's getting a new trial by tomorrow. Now, Peterson was found guilty back in 2004 for the murder of his wife, Laci Peterson, and their unborn son, Connor. But his lawyers say his conviction should be thrown out over issues of juror misconduct, including one juror known as Strawberry Shortcake, who allegedly lied on her questionnaire at the time. Now, attorneys for both sides met earlier this year to go over the evidence, and they're meeting again tomorrow, one last time, before the judge makes the final decision on whether Peterson will, in fact, get a new trial. Court TV's Ted Rowlands takes a look back at this tragic case.
It was one of the most notorious murder cases of the 21st century. Scott and Laci Peterson, a young California couple expecting their first child, when Laci disappeared and her husband became the prime suspect.
State of California versus Scott Peterson. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Laci Denise Peterson.
In November of 2004, Scott Peterson was convicted of murder in the deaths of his pregnant wife, Laci, and their unborn son, Connor, in their Modesto, California home. Prosecutors say he dumped their bodies in San Francisco Bay from his fishing boat after killing them around Christmas Eve 2002. Their remains washed ashore the following spring. Peterson claimed he was innocent.
The most likely thing that happened is that she was abducted, and she was abducted by someone other than my client.
But the jury and the public didn't buy it.
It doesn't match up. Who goes fishing by themselves Christmas Eve in a boat?
Peterson's trial became a sordid tale of deception and infidelity. His affair with massage therapist Amber Frey exposed as she turned state's evidence.
We did have a romantic relationship.
Frey secretly recorded conversations between her and Peterson. In one such call, Peterson claimed he was in Paris when he was actually in Modesto while hundreds of volunteers were searching for his pregnant wife.
Amber, clear your chair. Are you there?
Yes. Are you having a good time?
I'm near the Eiffel Tower.
Amber Frey's testimony helped prosecutors secure the guilty verdicts against Scott Peterson. Crowds of people gathered outside this San Mateo courthouse and reacted to the verdicts as they were being read.
Find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Laci Denise Peterson.
Peterson was sentenced to death for his crimes, but it was justice that brought very little comfort to those close to Laci and Connor.
There's many times that I wake up in the middle of the night. I just wake up and I just start crying because I realize that Laci's gone and that I'll never see her again.
It must have been very hard for you all to go from loving Scott like a son to have a completely different mindset.
It was for me.
After 17 years on death row in August of 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned Scott Peterson's death sentence.
Calling the matter of the people versus Scott Lee Peterson.
The High Court ruled that jurors who personally disagreed with the death penalty but were willing to impose it were improperly dismissed.
And Court TV anchor Ted Rowlands will actually be in California covering tomorrow's hearing for Scott Peterson, and we're going to bring you live updates throughout the day on Wednesday right here on Court TV. For right now, though, I want to bring in our guest analyst for this hour, former Assistant State Attorney and Criminal Defense Attorney Sue Ann Robinson, joining us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as well as former prosecutor, trial attorney Vonda Sargent, still with us in Seattle once again. Thank you both, ladies, for being with us. So, Sue Ann, of course, we've been covering extensively here on Court TV these allegations of juror misconduct brought forth by the defense, largely surrounding juror number 7, aka Strawberry Shortcake. Essentially the gist of it is that she was, a victim of domestic violence herself and had suffered kind of some of the same things alleged here. But do you think that really the defense has met their burden from what you've heard in terms of what they need to show to try to get a new trial?
From what I've heard, the defense hasn't met their burden. As far as the testimony from Strawberry, the actual juror, she advised that she was actually the aggressor in the domestic violence situation. But we're really getting into the weeds in terms of what actually happened to her, because the standard that the judge is going to apply is whether or not her being on the jury completely changed the course of the case. whether or not permitting her to be on that jury with her life experience would have changed the conviction. And at the end of the day, the judge was there, and the judge knows what was presented, and that Scott Peterson was presented as a liar and a cheater. And the jury convicted him quite possibly on that, and not because of this individual juror's life experience. And so the defense is going to have to convince the judge that the conviction would have been completely different if this particular juror wasn't there. And that is a very high burden based on all of the evidence in the case.
Yeah, and we actually dug up a clip from 2005 after the verdict came in, when Rochelle Neese, Strawberry Shortcake, juror number 7, actually talked to the media about the outcome. Let's go ahead and play that.
What was the most difficult part of the evidence for you to see and the testimony for you to hear? And also, were you aware of having the family sitting in front of you all the time? Did that weigh on you also?
Little man was the hardest for me. Little man, that's what I call him, Connor. That was the hardest for me. Because, as I said, that was his daddy who did that. You know, his daddy should have been the protector of him, and instead he took his life. So that was hard for me. And Laci, and yeah, his family, and both families. My heart goes out to both families. And it was hard. It was hard seeing the families.
So, you know, this kind of this commentary about little man, you know, the nickname that she had for Connor, and then kind of this testimony that we heard during these meetings about whether there should be a new trial. I mean, there was even these reports that she had a picture which she claimed depicted little man. So, Vonda, I mean, sure, there seems to be some kind of argument for some sort of, you know, emotional feeling post-verdict, but the counter argument here is that that was her feeling after the verdict, not before the trial. What do you think?
I think that's accurate. And even throughout the trial, if she had little monikers for individuals in the courtroom or even any of the victims, that doesn't matter. Nicknaming the murdered child or unborn murdered child little man, that's not dispositive of whether or not she was predisposed to a guilty verdict before she got on this jury. I think it's a whole bunch of smoke, and I don't think they've met their burden. There was sufficient evidence to show that Scott Peterson was involved in the murder of his unborn son and his wife, or caused the loss of their life. And I just don't think that this is going to, they're going to win at the end of the day with a new trial 20 years afterwards. Just don't think they've met their burden. So I agree with Sue-Ann 100%.
And Sue-Ann, you know, we were discussing, you know, this kind of non-disclosure about the fact that she had been, you know, an alleged domestic violence victim herself. I'm talking about Rochelle Neese, the juror here, and apparently had been threatened as well when she was pregnant. But she actually said that none of this crossed her mind when she was filling out the questionnaire, and the question about, you know, whether you're involved in a lawsuit surrounding these kind of matters. She said she didn't know that a restraining order, which she had taken out, was a form of a lawsuit. So my question to you is, this idea of intent, of intentionally lying on the questionnaire, is that going to be really critical with the defense kind of trying to meet their burden for getting a new trial?
That would be part of their burden, to show that she intentionally misrepresented. And I think her responses, as authentic as they are, will rule the day. Because if she didn't know that a restraining order is a lawsuit because of her life experience, then that's what she represented to the court, and that's what the court is going to have to accept unless the defense presents something to refute that. And I think, you know, exactly as Vonda said, as we've been saying, there was so much evidence against Scott Peterson. The jury obviously convicted him based on more than just one juror's life experience. And I think it's an important learning point for people to understand when they are on a jury panel, your life experience doesn't necessarily disqualify you. Sometimes that can make you more fair and more impartial because you can look at a set of facts fairly and impartially because you understand the context of it. So I don't necessarily agree with the defense even arguing that, oh, because maybe she had some experience in domestic violence that caused her to be impartial. If she misrepresented on purpose and maliciously, that to me shows a bias.
Yeah, absolutely, Sue Ann. I mean, you raise an excellent point. Every juror is a human being. They all have life experiences. They all have their own opinions. They all have their own emotions. The question is, are they going to be impartial and unbiased when they're deciding a case, right, ladies?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
That's the ultimate question.
Yeah. Thank you both so much, Vonda Sargent and Sue Ann Robinson.